Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's Health and Safety at Work webinar, which is going to focus on health and safety at work and why do we bother. So, as usual, before we start, we would like to introduce ourselves. And today's webinar will be led by Dom Greenwood, who is our Senior Health and Safety and Environmental Management Consultant. I'm Victoria Templeton. I'm one of the HR Knowledge Managers, and I'll support Dom today in running today's webinar and shall help field any questions that you have at the end. We're also supported by Drew in the background just to help with any technical queries. So if you do have any technical challenges, just drop a comment or a question as we go through and we'll sort that for you. And because we have lots of you today who've joined us, then we will be placing you all on mute. But of course, as usual, we like to hear your questions. And so we will be taking questions at the end. So please do let us know of anything you'd like us to answer in the question box that's available to you. You'll see a quick guide just to show you how you do that. And for those of you that normally attend our webinars, we do like to make it as interactive as possible. So we will be running several polls throughout. And when we do come up to running a poll, it will appear on your screen like this. And then once we've launched the poll, you just then select the most appropriate answer. Now, I just wanted to let you all know that when you do participate in polls, you will need to ensure that your screen is not in full screen mode, as for some reason the polls don't work, that don't pick up your vote when you're in full screen. And so, without further ado, I'm going to then hand over to Dom, who will lead this morning's webinar. Thank you.
Morning, or actually good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second webinar of this year. It's I can't believe it's been another 4 weeks since we did the first one. Today, obviously, we're talking about health and safety at work, and the title really is, why do we bother? Just going to flash a quick agenda up there for everybody. I'm going to talk about health and safety perception and some of the probably the negative language around that. Why we manage health and safety and some of the reasons we do that, and then moving on to some of the UK laws and regulations. What would the consequences to you and your business be if you didn't manage health and safety correctly, sufficiently and properly? We're going to do and sort of touch and scratch the surface of statutory compliance, and then we're going to look at what you can do as an employer, manager, director, and then how we can possibly help you as a business going forward, and then some useful links at the end with our next webinar series and our next set of training courses, obviously, to finish off as well. So there's quite a lot to get through, but I'm sure we can do that. So I run a number of health and safety training courses at sort of level 2 and level 3 levels, and fire as well. And this is often the first question that I ask all the delegates when they come on the course. What do you think of when you hear those words, health and safety? And quite a lot of the time, the delegates often don't want to be there. They've been asked to go by their manager, and I'm happy to say towards the end of the course when we do the evaluation, they've had a really good day. But these are some of the questions I hear about, and so the answers I hear about when running the course. So it's boring. Health and safety is boring. It's got that stereotypical image, portrayed in the kind of 1970s and 1980s, clipboard and the guy going around in a grey suit, that type of thing. It's just too much to do. It's taking people away from their day jobs. We're here to make sales, we're here to do operations, we're here to do whatever it might be, and health and safety is a byproduct, and there's just far too much to do. There's loads of red tape, whether it be from the government, whether it be from a regulatory perspective. There's just loads of red tape that we've got to get through, and it's often seen as needless. Policies and procedures. Yes, there obviously is some. But again, the perception is there's just reams and reams and reams of policies and procedures, and it doesn't have to be that way. But that still is the image. People often talk about PPE, and obviously we've been embroiled in that world for the last couple of years. We've all been wearing PPE just to go shopping or wherever we've been, and obviously PPE regulations are changing and have changed. So PPE is often talked about. Rules and regs, again, linked to a lot of those topics as well. The HSE obviously gets mentioned, the Health and Safety Executive, so people often talk about that. The dreaded risk assessments, there's no end of different formats. There's a number of different ways they can be displayed and presented, but risk assessments always get brought up when people think about health and safety. Fines, again, linked to the HSE. And again, we're going to do a little exercise later. I'm going to show you some stuff about the new sentencing guidelines. And in the worst case scenario of an accident, incident or investigation, there could be court or jail time. Training is a big part of everything with regards to health and safety, as you know, and obviously linked to that would be accidents, and linked to those would be, again, the court stroke jail, but all of it really is linked together. So with that in mind, I'm just going to pass back to Victoria to run our first poll. So I'm going to hand back to Victoria now.
Lovely. And I'm going to just bring up the first poll. And the question is, do you feel that health and safety is taken seriously in the workplace? So let's launch that, and we should have that on your screen now. So just select yes or no, and we'll keep the vote open for a few moments. Remember not to be in full screen mode if you want to participate. Okay, leave it for a few more moments. Okay, and I'm going to close the poll and share the results for everybody. So what we have is 88% say yes, Dom, and 12% say no.
Brilliant. And can you just remind me the full question, Victoria? Because obviously I don't see it on my screen. Was it,
yeah,
is
do
health
you
and
feel
safety
that health and safety is taken seriously in your workplace?
Yeah, that's great. And obviously 88%, really high score, really pleased with that. And that's testament to employers, the culture, the vision of the company. And that's great. And obviously long may that continue. For the 12% of people that didn't feel that was the case, then obviously this webinar could be a starting point. Again, at the end, when we put up contact details, if you'd like to make contact with us, we're more than happy to advise as well. And there's loads of useful links that you can do things yourself as well. Okay,
let me hide that poll now and let you carry on. There we go. Back to you, Dom.
So why do we manage health and safety? Well, the overwhelming and overarching reason it is the law. We don't have a choice. There's a number of legislations and laws out there, and we're going to cover some of those depending on which industry you're in. But the main one is obviously the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. There's a number of other regulations that sit under that, again, depending on your sector, but we don't have a choice. It's absolutely a moral and ethical reason that you'd want to do that. You know, as an employer, director, owner of a company, you know, you want your workforce to go home the way they came in a safe manner back to their families. It's just an ethical decision that the board would need to make, that health and safety needs to be taken seriously. You know, we don't want accidents in the workplace, whether that be for staff, contractors, visitors, guests, if it's in a hotel, for instance. So, you know, health and safety needs to be taken seriously from a moral and ethical reason. It absolutely improves reputation in the sector that you're in. You know, nobody's going to want to work with or give business to or potentially align themselves with a company that's inherently bad at health and safety, is always getting inspected by the HSE, having loads of accidents, and is getting high profile in their sector for being uncompliant. So it absolutely helps improve reputation in the particular sector that you're in. And I've seen that, having had 25 years in the leisure and fitness industry. You know, it gets around in the sector who the compliant operators are, and also the ones that aren't. So you may not want to work for them, or obviously give business to those particular companies. Moreover than that, it will give reputation and improve reputation locally. You know, every business needs to be mindful of its local demographic. People that might work there could live locally. People that might shop there or use them as a service or as customers could also live locally. So it's going to help improve reputation locally.
Okay, so hopefully everything's going to be sorted. Okay, so I was just saying here that there's guidance for directors, and health and safety should appear regularly on the agenda for board meetings. The presence on a board of a health and safety director can be a strong signal that the issue is being taken seriously, and health and safety should be integrated into key governance structures, including board subcommittees such as risk, remuneration, as well as audit. And of course, health and safety arrangements must be adequately resourced. And so this is all now about what is statutory compliance. Well, we have the Health and Safety at Work Act of 1974. We know that that places legal duties on employers to protect the employed through the provision of a safe working environment. Statutory compliance is a legal requirement, and normally the responsibilities lies with the nominated person or team within the compliant company. Now, the phrase statutory compliance is often used to describe what an organisation must do in terms of its legal duties, particularly in relation to property-related health and safety matters. But what makes up your statutory compliance? Well, there must be that health and safety policy statement. A health and safety policy statement sets out how you can manage health and safety within your workplace. It demonstrates your business's attitude towards health and safety and the steps, arrangements and systems you have in place to ensure you comply with their health and safety legislation. And of course, your policy statement must be signed by the highest ranking officer, like your CEO, MD. But we also have insurance certificates, and you must get an employer's liability insurance as soon as you become an employer. And so your policy must cover you for at least £5 million and come from an authorised insurer. Now, in accordance with the health and safety executive, they also do talk about you can be fined up to 2,500 every day that you are not properly insured. And you can also be fined £1,000 if you do not display your employer's liability certificate or refuse to make it available to inspectors when they ask. It's good practice, and we also advise that you also have professional indemnity insurance or PI insurance, and that covers legal costs and expenses incurred in your defence, as well as any damages or costs that may be awarded if you're alleged to have provided inadequate advice, instruction, services, loss of property, unintentional breach of copyright, as well as loss of goods or designs that causes your client to lose money. There is also then the public liability insurance covering the cost of claims made by members of the public, for instance, that occur in connection with your business activity, and also includes the cost of compensation for personal injuries, loss or damage to property as well. Now, I'm assuming most of you will have this poster in your workplace. Well, everybody should do, because it's by law you have to display your health and safety exec approved law poster, because it provides each of your workers with the equivalent leaflet, and it is available as a free download, and it can be purchased from the health and safety executive as well. So that has to be advertised and promoted throughout your business. In terms of the statutory compliance, then having that health and safety management system is important. The Management of Health and Safety at Work regulations of '99 require employees to put in place arrangements to control health and safety risks. And as a minimum, you should have the processes and procedures required to meet the legal requirements. So as it says here, then you need to have a written health and safety policy if you employ more than 5 people. Assessments of the risks to employees, contractors, customers, partners, and any persons that comes to be affected by your business activities, as well as arrangements for the effective planning, organising, control, monitoring and review of the preventative and protective measures, as well as access to competent health and safety advice, providing employees with information about the risks in the workplace and how they're protected, instruction for training for employees in how to deal with the risks, and ensuring there's adequate and appropriate supervision in place, as well as the need to consult with employees about the risk at work and current preventative and protective measures. Now, as I'm discussing that all seems very relevant and topical now, especially as we move forward with learning to live with COVID in the workplace and having that safe COVID environment. And all of this will be covered as well in a health and safety management system. So risk assessments are essential. You have a legal duty to assess the risks to the health and safety of your employees and risks to the health and safety of persons not in your employment, to which they are exposed to while they're at work or, in your work premises. Visitors, contractors, agency workers, anybody that comes on site. And so in carrying out a risk assessment, it is a valuable way of involving the staff who do the work. Now, safe systems of work Employers are legally obliged to provide and maintain systems of work that are, so far as reasonably practicable, safe and without risks to health. And then finally, we look at RAM's risk assessment method statement, which is an important health and safety document that's completed to identify the steps to be undertaken to carry out a specific activity or task in a safe manner. Now, RAMs can be utilised in conjunction with the risk assessment process, and according to the Health and Safety Executive, RAMs are not required by law, but they are a good way of detailing the scope of the assessment. And as we now look at COSH, which is the control of substances hazardous to health. So under this piece of legislation, the COSH assessments are required by law for any substances that are hazardous to health. So the use or production of any substance hazardous to health, including liquids, dusts, fumes, etc., they require assessment under the regulations. And the best way to complete this is by downloading the safety data sheet, SDS, of the product, and to use that to help you complete the risk assessment. And if we look at fire, well, there must be a fire risk assessment. It's a legal requirement. If you are responsible for a building, for example, as an employer, owner or occupier of premises that aren't a single private dwelling, such as a private home, then you need to make sure a suitably competent person completes that fire risk assessment. And it's your duty to identify fire risks, hazards that exist in your premises, and then take that appropriate action. And in addition, if 5 or more people work at your premises, then you'll need your fire risk assessment to be a written record. And this needs to be reviewed regularly and whenever significant changes have been made that would have an impact on it. So it is good business sense as well as a legal requirement. Often businesses don't recover after a fire, and effective fire prevention starts with properly understanding the risks first. So in terms of the statutory compliance, then we need to think about thorough inspections and servicing certificates. And these need to be completed and issued by a competent organisation. So if we think about fire and the fire alarm, that's every 6 months. And the BS 5839 recommends that a fire alarm system should be inspected by a competent agency at least 6 months, and the government recommends following that standard. When we think about emergency lighting, then there should be a daily test, so a visual inspection of the emergency light system that runs on central battery source. The indicators on the central power supply are checked to see if they are operational, and then there's a monthly test that is you test the luminaries to ensure that they will automatically turn on when there's a power outage. Now, in terms of any annual test, then for 3 hours, a full rated duration test should be done to check if all the emergency lights will function and produce the acceptable level of light. And then finally, fire extinguishers. So these must be maintained in good working order. The RP should be carried out monthly in terms of having those visual checks. They must be serviced annually by a competent person. And it's also a legal requirement to keep a permanent record of all servicing, maintenance and inspections of fire extinguishers. So when we think about the inspections and servicing certificates, these need to be completed, as I said, by and issued by a competent organisation. And we also have to consider lift operations and lift equipment regulations. So these regulations cover a wide range of equipment, including cranes, forklift trucks, lifts, hoists, mobile elevating work platforms, and vehicle inspection platform hoists. Now, the definition also includes lifting accessories such as chains and slings and eye bolts, etc. And in general, the inspections take place at 3 levels. 3 intervals, sorry. So firstly, there's a 6-month check for the lifting equipment and any associated accessories used to lift people. At 6 months, there's also a check for all lifting accessories, and at 12 months for all other lifting equipment. So that's just really important to make a note of. Now, in terms of electricity, then we obviously have the electrical regulations. And so most standard workplace environments need an electrical installation condition report that's produced at least every 5 years. But there should also be regular routine inspections conducted at least annually. And different sectors have different inspections that are needed. So you can check via this website here whether when your place of work does need an EICR. And a copy of these slides will be sent out, by the way, after the webinar. And of course, we have PAT testing. So the electricity at work regulations do require that any electrical equipment that has a potential to cause injury is maintained in a safe condition. There's currently no strict legal requirement for PAT testing, and the most effective way to ensure that these regulations are met is through your PAT testing process. And if we think about emergency procedures, there is also legislation in regarding emergency procedures, and that's the Management of Health and Safety at Work regs. And workplaces must have a plan for emergencies that can have a wider impact. Special procedures are needed, for example, for emergencies such as serious injuries, explosions, flood, poisoning, electrocution, fire, terrorism, bomb threats, radioactivity and chemical spills. So there has to be plans in place for how you deal with emergency procedures, as well as fire drills and the training that supports that. So fire drills, as we know, are essential in any workplace or public building for practicing what to do in the event of a fire. They are also a legal requirement under the Fire Safety Order of 2005, and so all employees in a company must participate. Now, you should carry out at least one fire drill per year and record that result. So you must keep those results as part of your fire safety and evacuation plan as well. However, good practice is perhaps doing a drill maybe quarterly or whenever new staff join. So just find a frequency that's appropriate and relevant for your business. And as we move on to gas, then as an employer, you are legally responsible for the safety of your workers in relation to gas safety. And so what this means by law is that you must repair and maintain gas pipework. Flues and appliances must be in a safe condition, and ensure that there's annual gas safety checks on each appliance and flue to make sure they're carried out. And asbestos. The Control of Asbestos Regulations 2012 also applies to all non-domestic premises, regardless of the nature of the business or the industry. And so that includes all industrial, commercial and public buildings, such as hospitals, schools, as well as factories, offices and shops. And I can't say the word, but an asbestos survey, is a statutory duty if the property, the building was built before 2000, it's a non-domestic building, it's a public area of domestic buildings or construction work. And considering Legionella, well, there are also duties under the Health and Safety at Work Act that extends to risks from Legionella bacteria, and that may arise from work activities. So it's about managing any risks, preventing or control of those risks, and keeping and maintaining correct records in place. Now, a competent agency is needed to complete that risk assessment, and that should look at ensuring the water temperature in all or some parts of the system is between 20 and 45 degrees. Water must be stored or recirculated as part of your system. There are sources of nutrients such as rust, sludge, scale, organic matter, and the conditions are likely to encourage bacteria to multiply. Now, it's possible for water droplets to be produced, and if so, whether they can be dispersed over a wide area. For example, if you've got showers and aerosols from cooling towers, showers, hot tubs, and it's likely that any of your employees, residents, visitors are more susceptible to infection due to age, illness, or weakened immune systems, and whether they could be exposed to any contaminated water droplets. We then have the provision and use of work equipment, and that requires that the equipment that's provided for the use at work is suitable for the intended use, safe for use and maintained in a safe condition, as well as inspected to ensure it's correctly installed and does not subsequently deteriorate. It must be used only by people who have received adequate information, instruction and training as well. And so generally any equipment which is used by an employee at work is covered. So for example, hammers, knives, ladders, drilling machines, circular saws, photocopies, and motor vehicles. And so here's just a list here of the frequency in terms of that assessment that you can see here. And if we think about first aid, we all know the, we've all got obligations in terms of first aid, and there are employer legal duties, and they come from the health and safety first aid regulations. And it's about requiring employees to provide that adequate and appropriate equipment, facilities and personnel to ensure their employees receive immediate attention if they're injured or taken ill at work. Now, these regulations apply to all workplaces, including those that have fewer than 5 employees, and to the self-employed. Now, employers are required to carry out an assessment of first aid needs. So this needs to involve consideration of workplace hazards and risks, the size of the organisation and other relevant factors to determine what first aid equipment, facilities and personnel should be provided. Now, regulations do not place a legal duty on employers to make first aid provision for non-employees, such as the public or children in school. However, the Health and Safety Executive strongly recommends that non-employees are included in an assessment of first aid needs and that provision is made for them. Now, on the Health and Safety Executive, they will prosecute in cases where there is a significant risk, a disregard for established standards or persistent poor compliance with the law. And so just coming on to a few other duties before we have our next poll, and they include your DSE assessments. So the health and safety display screen equipment regulations, they apply to workers who use DSE daily for an hour or more at a time. And we describe these workers as DSE users. The regulations don't actually apply to workers who use DSE infrequently or only use it for a short period of time. We then have noise at work, and that's about the control of noise at regulations of 2005 and ensuring that employers are preventing or reducing risks to the health and safety from exposure to noise at work. Employees also have duties under those regulations too. And then working from height or at height, the work at height regulations of 2005 do prevent death and injury caused by fall from height. So if you are an employer or you control work at height, for example, facilities managers or building owners who may contract others to work at height, then the regulations will apply to you. And so employers and those in control of any work at height activity must make sure it's properly planned, supervised and carried out by competent people. So this includes using the right type of equipment for working at height. So that brings us on to our next poll. So just remember again not to be in your full screen, and I'm just going to launch the next poll. And the question is, do you have a nominated competent person in health and safety and fire? So I'll keep it open for a few moments. Okay, let's close that and share the results. So a great proportion of you have contributed and do have a nominated competent person in health and safety, so that's brilliant. So for those of you that have voted no, then just have a think about what we've gone through this morning in terms of fire safety, the obligations for employers, and if you do want any further guidance or support, then reach out to Dom separately after the event. So thank you for that poll, and I'm going to hide that now and I'll continue with the slides. And the next section is about the consequences of not managing health and safety. And so this is probably quite a few of these things will be obvious. So the consequences of not managing your health and safety, well, as you'll know from what I've just gone through, there'll be legal ramifications. So not only fines, but there could be some criminal charges and custodial sentences. You also are at risk of getting claims for compensation. if you are inadequately managing your health and safety, you're likely to be getting higher insurance premiums. It will also impact on the day-to-day running of your business, your productivity, and therefore your profitability of the business. You'll see a lack of motivation and employee engagement if perhaps they feel they're not being safely managed at work. And then there's also the reputational damage that comes with it. And, you know, with the use of social media now, it just takes one tweet, one post, and everything can be escalated. So it really is essential that you, you know, are mindful about the reputational damage as well that can come about if health and safety is not managed as it should. Funding issues. The obvious, obviously, is accidents. So if you're not managing it, health and safety, you are going to be seeing more accidents and serious illness and injury. Which in turn as well, you'll also see higher staff attrition, which at this moment in time, you know, people really want to hold on to their employees. You know, with the Great Resignation, you don't want to see your staff turnover rise. So it really is impacts on employees, and of course poor public relations. So you know, leading on to difficulties in recruiting if you've got that bad reputation in the local area. So these are really serious consequences and reinforce why we need to make sure we're getting health and safety right. And in terms of new sentencing guidelines for health and safety, well, they came into place in 2016 and they incorporated corporate manslaughter. In 2018, new guidelines were also issued to judges, which increased prison sentences for people convicted of gross negligence, manslaughter in the workplace setting. The sentencing guidelines are now based on company turnover, and you won't get insured if you're found negligent. Anyone convicted of manslaughter by gross negligence could face a prison sentence of up to 18 years. And Section 37 of the Health and Safety at Work Act is the potential for prosecution of company directors and senior officers. The person accused is a director, manager, secretary or other similar officer, and Section 37 also contains a power to disqualify directors as a potential sentence, as well as convicting and imprisoning for up to 2 years. So they are some really serious sentencing factors that we're seeing there. In terms of just some stats here that Dom's pulled together, that you can see that on average between 1975 and 2016, an average of 1.8 million fine. Between 2016 and now, 1 million fines, 50-50 split on fatal versus non-fatality. And then you've got some other similar statistics to do with custodial sentences. And actually, if you think of 189 is for the period of 1975 through to 2016, yet we're already at 48 from 2016 up to now. So this current era clearly is showing us that we're actually seeing more and more custodial sentences. And then in terms of average conviction time, there's some statistics here, how it's increased to 6 years from the 2016. 93% of health and safety prosecutions have actually resulted in a conviction. And a health and safety exec can bring about prosecution even if an accident hasn't happened. Only potential or risk of harm needs to be present in a prosecution, which is really interesting. So what can you do? Well, first of all, appoint a competent person in fire safety, develop a health and safety policy, promote a positive health and safety culture. And it's all about leading from the top and engaging and involving all levels of employees. And then having developed a health and safety management system, and as part of that, make sure you're reviewing all of your statutory compliance, make sure you have the correct permits, tickets, or certificates for your industry, and undertake your risk assessment for all tasks and activities. And as we move on from COVID, as I touched on a few moments ago, you know, ensure that COVID is incorporated in your risk assessment too. Train staff in all safety measures, develop safe systems of work, and look at the culture in your organisation. Make sure you've got clearly communicated emergency procedures and investigate all accidents, incidents and near misses. Look at your equipment, chemicals, processes and people, and see all of these activities as a positive. And so this is how we can help, or should I say Dom. So Dom will be able to help you with carrying out a statutory compliance audit. He can come on site and carry out audits, whether that's health, safety and fire risk assessments. He also runs level 2 health and safety training, level 2 fire safety training, and he can become your competent person if you wish for that to be assigned to Dom. So there's a lot of support that Dom can provide, risk assessments, both in terms of completion and creation of them, providing documents, checklists and a digital health and safety platform. And so what we would also like to share now is around further training. So I touched on something a moment ago. So there is the level 2 health and safety training. We do have a session coming up at the Kettering Park Hotel on the 29th of March, as well as the 9th of August. We also have dates in May and November. And then in terms of level 2 for fire safety, we've got the Kettering Park Hotel again on the 12th of April, August and December. And we also have one in June, and webinar attendees can attend those training courses for £99. And it includes refreshments, lunch, parking, books, resources and exam fee certificates. So it is a proper accredited certificated training course. And so that it would ordinarily now be the time for questions and answers, and I hope you do understand, but what I would suggest is if you have submitted any questions whilst I've been standing in for Dom, I would like to ask that Dom responds to those separately after the event. So what I'll do is make sure that your questions are put to Dom and that we provide some response on the back of this. So thank you ever so much for everybody and their patience and in continuing to listen to me as I stand in for Dom. If I could just bring the webinar to the close as usual, there is a final poll that we do like to launch, and that is really just to ask you whether you would like us to follow up with you on any of our services after today's webinar. And so that may be our HR services, HR training, the HR knowledge base, or health and safety. So that will be the health and safety services training, or even payroll. So do let us know if you'd like us to get in touch and to follow up with you, and we'll be more than happy to work with you on how we can help you in the future. So I'll just keep the poll open for a few seconds. Just a few more moments and then I'll close it. Right. Okay, I'll close that poll. Thank you very much. And if I continue with just to bring the webinar to a close, and for those of you who are regulars to our webinars, you'll recognise my voice because I run the HR webinars, and we do have a couple more, sorry, should I say. We've got the one in a couple of weeks, which is all about the importance of welfare meetings. So I'll be talking through around the advice and guidance for line managers on the purpose of welfare meetings and how to go about managing those. I'll then in April focus on disciplinary, and in particular how to write legally compliant conduct allegations. So please do sign up and join us in those HR webinars if you can. And Dom is also scheduled to run a webinar in April, which is an introduction to food safety. And so that's on the 21st. We are in the process of adding to our webinar program, so you should hear over the next week or so of what our next schedule is going to be from May onwards, so do keep an eye out. In regards to training management courses, then we do operate or run, the Equality Inclusion Management Development Training, which we have got running on the 1st of March. We're also running the Employment Law for Managers, as well as ILM Level 5 in Leadership and Management, which is online. We do also have some health and safety training courses, as noted here, some emergency first aid, level 2 health and safety, level 2 fire safety, and level 2 food safety. And I just also wanted to add that we're going to be promoting today or tomorrow our virtual employment law seminar that we're going to run in March, at the end of March. So that will be Wednesday the 23rd. So it'll be really great to have you join us for that. It will be a 2-hour event, and be several of us that will be running that, facilitating that event. We'll be making it as interactive as we possibly can, but it will be a virtual seminar, and we'll be looking at the upcoming employment law changes that we're expecting to see in 2022. We'll be going over some key significant case rulings and what they mean for employers, and go through considering what the current trends and what we need to be focusing on from a HR strategic direction for 2022. So there'll be lots and lots that we cover there, so please do look out for that when we start promoting it. As I said, it should be today and tomorrow that we start doing that. And any further questions, please do get in touch via the number or the email, or obviously you can go onto our website and get in touch with us that way. And as usual with all our webinars, we shall be sending out a short survey to capture your feedback, and we would really appreciate if you could just take a few moments just to complete that. We really value your feedback. And that brings me to the end of today's webinar. I really do apologise that perhaps I've had to stand in for Dom. Hopefully everything, I'm sure, will be fine for Dom. But as I said, any questions, do let us know, and I really appreciate you staying on, listening to the webinar in Dom's absence. So thank you all very much for joining today's webinar, and thank you, Drew, for helping in the background. Thank you very much.